With the advent of recombinant DNA techniques in the early 1970s, a debate arose regarding the potential impact of genetically modified organisms on the environment and public health. It also raised a number of societal and ethical issues posed by the capacity to modify the molecular centerpiece of life. In 1975, scientists met in Pacific Grove, California, for the landmark International Conference on Recombinant DNA Molecules held at Asilomar. This conference launched the development of what was to become an enduring system of oversight for research utilizing recombinant DNA technology. In this video, participants involved in the Asilomar Conference share their recollections of the event and reflect on the legacy of that meeting.
The major concern was that there could be organisms created that would cause potential disease, harm of some sort.
There was concern at the time by using E. coli as the cloning vehicle for doing most of these initial studies at the time of Asilomar, that we were going to create unknown pathogens. We were going to convert E. coli to a very dangerous agent that didn't live symbiotically with other bacteria in our GI tract. We were going to cause possibly, and people said, epidemics of cancer by cloning unknown genes, making E. coli very robust and being able to spew out huge quantities of potentially very dangerous proteins.
Safety of new and still unproven science was an issue. It was a question of safety, but also a question of establishing the principle that science is a process that can effectively regulate itself to the public good.
It wasn't an emergency situation, but it did seem like we could cause trouble, and we didn't want to.
Where we are today was the opening gambit was Asilomar, and the whole biopharma enterprise resulted from that whole period of our history.
It showed that scientists are able to identify problems and face them and discuss them and develop methods for dealing with them.
The moratorium was so strikingly novel that the scientists themselves would call for a moratorium, that the moratorium would be recognized internationally and by everyone, even though there was no laws that would preclude it, because if anyone broke that moratorium, everybody would break that moratorium.
This was an opportunity that a lot of us felt would be good for science.
The scientists that were involved in the research, for the first time, I think, did some self-regulation, self-examination, and wrote a moratorium that was not legally mandated, but that was observed by all the research in the field. And that was the first time that they showed so much really moral and ethical concern for what they were doing.
Because there was so much visibility to Asilomar, the investment community decided that there was something new here, and it was going to transform society, and therefore it was valuable, and therefore we should put money into this. And that led to a lot of venture investments in early biotech companies that wouldn't have been there if society hadn't known about this technology and how transformational it was. The general principles that Asilomar used, I think, still have value today. New technology, new opportunities for something that benefits society has to be evaluated, but the benefit-risk ratio because you don't see the future. You need to find a mechanism to explore the benefits at the same time monitoring the risk.
There are implications for these studies that we don't understand yet. We don't understand the full implications of the work, of the directions that this field is going. And it needs certainly oversight and supervision and care and collaboration with the public.
It's more important to focus on changing organisms that will affect the public health. And the public health means how it affects current vaccine programs, making organisms more resistant, making organisms have new properties that will allow them to infect new types of hosts.
We were probably very naive at Asilomar by not having more people at that conference who were informed about infectious disease pathogens and how pathogens really work. We're still far, in a scientific sense, of understanding all the components that a pathogen must have to be infectious and to be dangerous. And therefore, in my opinion, the risk of not exploring this science is much greater than the risk of exploring this science.
I think the major legacy from Asilomar is that it showed that the community of scientists, although self-interested, were able to come together in a public-spirited way and are able to come together at any time in a public-spirited way and face up to difficult issues.
All the greatest legacies of Asilomar is clearly the scientific progress over the last 40 years. We did put guidelines in place. We gained the confidence of the public that scientists were trying to move forward with adequate attention to risk and for their benefit.
Because it established the RAC as maybe one of the world's premier transparent scientific bodies to discuss difficult new technology.
The legacy that scientists showed so much self-restraint and social conscience at a time where their research was going into directions that seemed problematic for the good of the, not just of science or of the people working in the lab, but for the well-being of the population at large. I think that example made a difference, and that other fields, other scientists, other disciplines entirely took that as an example of something to keep in mind.
It has created an ambiance in the life science community of paying attention to this public trust, risk versus benefit, how to bring people together in moving scientific progress into new realms.